All right, hey, what's up? Welcome back to the Barbell Medicine YouTube channel or Instagram Live, wherever you're getting this from. Hey, I'm Dr. Jordan Feigenbaum with Barbell Medicine. We do this Instagram Live thing on more than an occasional basis. And we stream it on YouTube. So what we do is we take your questions, we answer them as best as we can, and try to spread the good word. So hopefully you guys got some good questions tonight. This is September 4th, 2018. It's Tuesday. I don't know what else. Let's see what else is going on. We updated some templates. So if you're in the market for hypertrophy plan or a new, like a 12-week strength kind of peaking cycle to get into your next powerlifting meet, be useful. We got two new members of the Barbell Medicine team with Dr. Michael Ray and Dr. Derek Miles. They're doing pain and rehab consultations and programming based on that through Barbell Medicine. So, if that's something you're interested in, contact us. We'll go from there. Also, this is the last month to get group programming for $75 a month. It'll bump up to $100 next month. We're not increasing the prices of anybody who's already joined group programming. So, if that's something you're interested in, we'll do it. All right. See if we get some questions here. Hello, Mr. Doctor, looking mighty fine tonight. Hey, if I didn't know better, I would think that you were hitting on me, but that's okay. That's okay. Is saturated fat bad for you? Big Oli asks. I actually don't think that it's appropriate to say that any food is good or bad for you. Saturated fat, if eaten in excess in a hypercaloric situation, meaning that you're gaining weight, that's the definition of a hypercaloric situation, is probably not great for you. Most people will, in that situation, have a worsening, at least transiently, of their lipid parameters. Additionally, if you have like familial hypercholesterolemia, or if you have some other lipid disorder, hypertriglyceridemia that's hereditary based at all, then that might not respond very well to eating a diet high in saturated fats. I don't think that you should avoid it altogether. I just think that as part of a diet that would reasonably tick all the boxes for being healthy, so that is the appropriate amount of calories that you need to meet the proper body weight for you, okay, and maintain an appropriate body composition and support your activities. And that you get enough fiber in, and that you get many servings of fruits and vegetables and the correct amount of protein. I think that ultimately ends up being lower in saturated fat in general. All right. Sebastian Contreras asks, how do CrossFit Games athletes maintain or increase their strength while doing so much cardiovascular work? So I think that they do less traditional cardio than you probably think, although many people aren't privy to actually how CrossFit Games athletes train. I've been in a fortunate position to be around many of them, work with many of them, so I kind of know the skinny. They do a lot of CrossFit. That's their sport, so they do a lot of CrossFit. That's not really cardio. That's anaerobic conditioning, strength endurance, skill, stuff like that. It's not pure cardio, and so you wouldn't expect as big of an interference effect. Additionally, most of their quote-unquote strength improvements are seen in exercises that they don't actually test regularly. So, it's not like every 2 months somebody set in a new clean and jerk 1RM. They may not even be testing that, but they are doing a lot of clean work and jerk work, for instance. Same thing with their snatch. And both of those are sub-maximal strength sort of displays. They're really power displays. So you would expect that those would actually improve as their technique improves. As far as getting better in the squat, press, deadlift, slow lifts like that, I think a lot of it is just they still have a lot of trainability in those lifts, and also you're basically looking at the peak of the pyramid. I mean, these people are legitimately the best athletes that are at their chosen sport, and it is not surprising to me that they can not only tolerate the amount of training that's necessary to be good at their sport and to not get injured doing their sport, but that they can also thrive in that sort of situation. So I think that's one of the prerequisites to being a good CrossFitter, right? So, all right, let's head over to the tubes. Let's see. Let's see. Does masturbation have a detriment on training performance? No. There you go. Just like sex, I think that that being said, if you expect psychologically, if your expectation is that you'll do worse if you were to, have adult gymnastics by yourself at RPE 10, and your expectation is that after that you're going to do worse, well, that may be a self-fulfilling prophecy. There's a psychological component to that. Other than that, no, the evidence on that's not indicative that that people do worse. Can dips replace bench press if I get dizzy when I lie on my back? No, they're not the same exercise. That being said, if you're not competing in powerlifting, I don't know if the bench press is the great, a super necessary component of any training program, unless your chosen sport is powerlifting or another sport where bench press is very, very important. So you could live a full and complete life doing dumbbell bench press. There's some loading issues there potentially, but then you could argue that maybe the load for a particular rep range isn't necessarily the most important thing either. So I probably wouldn't do dips though. The progressive overload there is a little less controllable, and then the joint stability requirements I think are a bit high for untrained folks. So anyway, all right. Robert Kingswood, what do you think of banded lifts? I think they adjust the force curve. They make it, most times in like unequipped powerlifting, full range of motion lifts, the hardest part of the lift is at the bottom, whereas bands and chains tend to change the force curve to where it's harder, midway up or towards the top. And so that changes where the muscles get a training effect at. So if somebody's sport required them to create a lot of force at non-lengthened muscle lengths, then you could say that bands would be good. I think that bands probably work best for folks who have not trained a lot already. And then maybe for an overload periodically, where you're placing a little bit more emphasis on the overload. But I don't think they're terribly useful overall. All right. Hey, Doc. Have you ever experienced a headache during your lift? Yeah, I had a headache today. The potential cause, I think, was someone with an XX chromosome set up. Can you run the 12-week strength as 11 weeks and just skip week 10? Yeah, you could. I'll probably just repeat it. All right. It's okay, dude. It's just Roma, no homo intended. Hey, not that there's a problem with that, right? All right. Easy DCPT. With strength being a very specific adaptation, how do you choose movements to focus on for sports performance, and how does it carry over? Well, it depends on the sport. So you would like to think about the sport-specific requirements, and then you would like to train some of those qualities as best as possible in the gym. I also think that you would try to look for empirical or published evidence wherever you can, and then you're going to see how your athlete responds to your given training intervention, even though there are difficulties in doing that objectively. That being said, I think for untrained folks, it would be hard to argue against a very general initial foray into strength training. That would probably look like a pretty diverse group of movements, squat patterns, pressing patterns, pulling patterns, probably with less variation than you would see down the line for someone who hadn't picked a sport, because they don't really have a reason to really, maximize their squat progress, for instance, unless they're going to a powerlifting meet, which means they picked a sport. But if they hadn't picked a sport, then they're later on in their training career, then they'd probably have a much higher variation than someone who just started, though they'd still have some variation. I would argue that the tenets of a novice program should be developing force production in similar but different and very overall useful ranges of motion, which I would define as being large ranges of motion, compound exercises. And I would say that developing movement efficiency, developing work capacity, muscular hypertrophy would all be very, very good. And I don't necessarily care about the absolute strength display improvement in 3 or 4 months on one particular exercise, unless the chosen sport is powerlifting. But again, early on in someone's training career, it doesn't really matter because they're not going to be competitive as a powerlifter anyway, right? So, like, what are you doing? Let's see. Jordan, I am getting to a halt on starting strength LP. Do you promise everything will get better with the bridge? No, not necessarily. I hope things get better, but I don't know if the bridge is the answer for you. Austin's 660 looking speedy. Yeah, his training's going well. Hopefully he has a big meet. That'd be nice. West Coast Barbell Club. Hey, Jordan, loving the content. And awesome to hear you got the clinical athlete guys on board too. Yeah, they love the clinical athlete. Now they're with us. We're cool. We're doing well. Let's see. Jordan, I'm 51. Is squatting 3 times per week? Question mark? I don't know if that's a question. Feels like it. Like what? My progress indicates as such. What is it indicating? Then again, maybe I'm going too heavy, RPE too high. I mean, I don't necessarily know if there's age-related adjustments you need to make to programming off the bat. I don't necessarily expect someone to do worse or better with just based on the information that you provided. I think 3 times a week squatting is a viable solution if you want to get much better at the squat and a particular variation of the squat. But if you're just looking for general strength and conditioning, I don't know if I would really hyper specialize a general strength and conditioning program. By the way, what should one wear to the seminar? Workout gear, I presume. Yeah. Bring your athleisure wear. Can I replace the pin press with pause press at the prescribed height? Sure, you can. Esteban Cantu. Yo, Jordan, what is your opinion on conjugate training? I found a barbell gym in town, just finishing novice linear progression, thinking about signing up or bridge. So I think that if you define, so it's not conjugate periodization, it's conjugate training. Conjugate periodization is block training compared to concurrent training where you train multiple things at once, although some elements of conjugate periodization do end up in some West Side type templates, but that's a whole nother deal. I don't think that there's anything unique to West Side barbell training methodology, and I think that when you try to pin them down on what exactly is their training program, what are their philosophy, that they squirm. And it doesn't mean that it's bad, it doesn't mean that it's wrong, it doesn't mean that it won't work for you. I just don't see the point of pot committing to conjugate training. I think if you want to use different exercises, if you want to use bands, chains, if you want to use dynamic effort methods somewhere in there, that's fine. Although I just don't see it being uniquely useful. So anyway, carry on. Hey Jordan, does the new 4-day hypertrophy template have more volume than the old 3-day and the new 3-day? Yes, they do. Let's see. On 9/10, so 6 days from now, I have rotator cuff surgery with biceps tendinosis. Okay, sling for 4 weeks. What to do during that time for strength and fitness? I'd see if you can safety squat, bar squat, belt squat, leg press, single arm movements. If you can do that, I would do all those things. Yep. If your doc says it's good. Hi doc, is creatine good for visual acuity? Doesn't do anything for it. So no and yes. What size shirt do you wear? Large or XL, depending on how hipster the brand is. Yeah, that's the deal. Oh, Colleen Foch is here. We have a celebrity. We have a celebrity. Pilonidal cyst removed from my butt. Okay. Thank you for sharing. Surgeon said no lifting for lower body. How to maintain strength? You cannot maintain strength. Because strength is specific to the movement that's being trained if you're not training that movement. That being said, I don't expect your strength on a particular movement to deteriorate, to an irreparable point, and I expect it to come back very quickly. So don't worry about it. Just, don't blow your butt out. Jordan, have you ever thought about growing your beard out to an RPE 10 and going strongman mode? And if you did, what would your strongman nickname be? Well, I have thought about growing my beard out, but I think that I would end up looking like a terrorist or a diet version of Alan Thrall. And the world just, look, we already have regular Alan Thrall. We don't need like a stevia sweetened, lukewarm version of Alan Thrall with worse hair. But if I did, I think my beard would be curly. It'd be very, Semitic, and so I think you'd have to call me the Hebrew Hammer. Yeah, I think that'd be it. Do I think that older folks' posture can be improved to get into better positions for the main lifts? I'm doubtful, but would like to hear your thoughts. I think that you have to define posture as either structural cause or volitional cause. I think that overall people who are sedentary, who are not active, tend to get better at doing the activities that they are exposed to very frequently. So I expect that their squat posture, their deadlift posture, pressing, bench, etc., get better via exposure therapy, meaning doing the exercise. But I wouldn't expect somebody with a kyphosis that's anatomical to get better with any amount of training. Yeah. Let's see. BM says, I'm finding that above 150 on the press, I'm getting lightheaded while valsalvaing. Is this something you've seen before? And if so, any ideas to fix? I think if you're holding your breath too long or something like that, that is a problem. But I don't think that 150 is some sort of like mythical barrier that every person has to pass to get to the other side. Let's see. Robert Wood, is it recommended to warm up with the bar for a few sets and then start at RPE 6 for the given day's work? I think it's going to be lower than that. Like my first set on squats is always like 135 or 60 kilos. So that's lower than RPE 6. Let's see. Mr. Pena, have you ever used a spider bar? It's a cambered squat bar with the safety handles. That would be cool. I haven't used it. I saw a picture of it. It looks neat. The cambered bar is fine for me, but if he can't do that and holding onto the sides doesn't work for him as a viable squat alternative, then spider bar would be fine, although it's less specific. But if it's more trainable, meaning that he can do it more consistently, more frequently, with more volume without beating up his shoulders and elbows, then maybe that's a good solution for him. Let's see. Also, I asked once but couldn't tell if you answered it. Apologies if you did. Oh, hey, there you go. Let's see. Hey, Doc, do you recall the study where you mentioned 10 minutes of walking generating muscle protein synthesis in elderly people off 20 grams of whey when compared to 40 grams? That is not what I said. I said that if you're older, then 10 minutes of activity tends to reduce the anabolic resistance such that it's almost indistinguishable between younger folks. I don't recall the actual citation off the top of my head, but that is definitely from the literature. Felt and heard pops in my lower back while deadlifting a PR set. That's not meaningful. Today my lower spine hurts a bit, but not severely. That doesn't mean anything either. Is there a problem if I start leaning my weight back to put less force on my back? I wouldn't do that. I would just train normally. If you have low back pain that is preventing you from training with the same volume, intensity, and frequency that you would otherwise train, well, you can lower the volume, intensity, and frequency, and train regardless. That being said, I cannot evaluate you from here, so that is not a doctor's opinion on your particular case, but pops and feeling anything in your low back, that's not sensitive enough to say, oh, you did something for sure. The only place where that's sensitive enough to do that is in the chiropractor's office if they're trying to generate an income. Whew, all right. Let's see. Yo, Jordan, hope you're doing fine. Any tips to solve piriformis syndrome or get relief? I would squat and deadlift. Yeah, and not necessarily label it piriformis syndrome. I would just train. Let's see. I'm sure it's possible to gain strength on a hypertrophy template, but are you going to get sub-max strength gains? If we define strength as 1 RM improvements in the squat, bench, deadlift, press, and we do a program where 1 RMs or similar type efforts are not consistently being trained, then it would be hard to argue that the program is optimal for generating 1 RM improvements, right? That being said, the program does provide regular exposure to singles. It does provide regular exposure to fairly high intensity type exercises. It does provide progressive overload in the form of both intensity and volume changes. And the lifts are still somewhat specific to the squat, bench, deadlift, press, deadlift, stuff like that. So I expect that someone would get stronger, but probably not as much as a powerlifting focused type training template, although that's not really the goal either, Would you recommend corticosteroid injection for L5-S1 herniated disc causing radiculopathy? I don't necessarily know that the herniated disc itself is causing the radiculopathy. I don't know if that's, having not reviewed the films, having not evaluated the patient, having not gone through the medical history of this, I don't actually know if it's causative. In fact, it may not, very likely not. I think that the what you're saying is that somebody has low back symptomology that is concerning them and affecting their daily life and their recreational pursuits. And so if you're asking, would a dramatic procedure such as a joint injection or steroid injection, in this case, improve their symptoms? Well, if they believe it's likely to work, if it's the doctor's wearing a white coat and uses a large needle and et cetera, then sure. I mean, that being said, I don't suspect it's a Band-Aid, and I don't necessarily know if I can counsel someone appropriately from here without having the responsibility to follow them up later on. I don't think that treating a mechanical cause of back pain is high yield, however, just in general. Now the really important question: what is your favorite ice cream color? Look, it's cookie dough. It's cookie dough, and if you don't like cookie dough, you're wrong. I'm just saying. That's the answer. Thoughts on 100-pound plates? Awful. Terrible. I had some 50-kilo Ivanko plates. So basically, when Austin and I and his wife and my roommate would all train, and my neighbor, really strong guy as well, we'd run out of plates, right? And I had, almost 2,000 pounds worth of plates there. So until I got, the 50-kilo Ivanko, so 110 pounds per piece. That being said, we only used them on deadlifts because everything else was too hard to use. So, Jordan. Ooh, here we go. Let's see. I think I lost this. Hey, Jordan, I want to start the bridge, but I also want to keep rock climbing with my friends on Tuesdays. Yeah, you could do that. I don't know if it's going to work as well as it should, but you also want to rock climb. And what are you going to do? Not climb? Jordan, do you have general recommendations for the limit of sets per workout of squats when training squats twice per week? There is no limit. Like Master P said, no limits. I don't know if he actually ever said that in succession, but definitely in the same song there was a that sort of visceral, guttural thing, and then no limit. Just saying. Let's see. Is there a reason, Sequoia Squat says, is there a reason that Barbell Medicine rarely programs 5 sets of back-offs? It appears that 4 sets is the max after RP7. Also, what is the specialization week in your programs? It is intensity specialization. So there are many programs that I write for individual clients where we do 8 back-offs, 7 back-offs, 9 tons. So not necessarily limited. The thing is, for our general templates, we're assuming a lot of things about the demographic. And I think it's very difficult to have this sort of auto-regulated, like, hey, do this many sets, without having more squish in there. So it'd be like, oh, do as many sets until the bar speed slows down to here, or the RPE gets to here at this average intensity. I think it gets a little squishier. So that being said, specialization is a time where volume starts to go down, intensity starts to go up, the specificity of the exercises gets a little tighter to the desired outcome that you're training for. So let's see. Hey, Doc, is the 4-day hypertrophy program has 4x8 deficit deadlifts on the 3rd day? Is this too much deadlift volume for someone coming off NLP? I don't think necessarily. It's just going to be lighter, right? You'll be all right. You'll live. Oof. Dr. Feigenbaum, thank you for all of the great and evidence-based info. Hey, thanks, Dad, bro, dude. Body of Knowledge 77, again, asking the real questions. Hello, Dr. Nuanced. That's me. Challah or matzah? That's not even close. Like, challah bread is is actually good, right? Like, matzah bread is objectively not good. So there you go. And for the vast majority, 3 days of lifting or 4. I'd prefer more rather than less. Most cases, I prefer more activity for most folks rather than less. If you consider the obesity epidemic, right, you're suggesting that, don't do too much. I don't want you to train too much because you might just get too fit. You might just get too jacked. You might just get too strong. You might just correct your, chronic disease states a little bit too well if you accidentally exercise too much. That being said, when it comes to the pursuit of optimal strength outcomes, if we define them, as the 1RM on a squat, bench, deadlift, press, etc., then I think that question becomes a little more nuanced. It just depends on the person. So 3 days might work well for a large swath of the population, but 4 days is probably in most folks' future if they train for long enough. Let's see. Dr. Feigenbaum, have you gone over any data of the optimal rate of volume a person can add to their program per any unit of time? I have not seen any data on that. No. What to do with actual red flag symptoms? Got toes falling asleep in sciatica. MRI shows a nerve being pressed on by a disc. Doc knows nothing about lifting and tells me to stop. What should I do? I think you need to get a diagnosis and you need to see somebody who's up on pain science. My recommendation would be if you're worried about it, after seeing a medical professional, like an actual doctor, not a chiropractor, which again, I'm not trying to hate on chiropractors. It's just we need to have a better physical exam. If you're looking for medical management, then I think if you can't find somebody on pain science, that Derek Miles and Michael Ray are guys, I think that would be useful pain and injury rehab consultation. I think that'd be worthwhile if you're looking for practical, actionable advice on your specific case. I just can't do that via YouTube or Instagram. There you go. Let's see. In the 12-week strength program, does the tricep accessory have to be what you put? No, you can do whatever you want. Baraki answered a question about cryotherapy on one of the Q&As. What do you think about heat, like hot tubs? I mean, hot tubs are cool. I don't think they do anything for your recovery, but they may do something for your social life. You know? Let's see. Is the Mark Ripito leaning on things meme page a passive-aggressive way to throw shade at Barbell Medicine? I don't think so. I think it's all in good fun. You know, I think I like the shirt that says not an SSC. We'll proudly wear that shirt. Let's see. Sore knees and shoulder. Oh, shoot. I lost my place. Sore knees and shoulders after training at end of the work week. Would you recommend reducing volume and or intensity for these late week sessions? Not necessarily. I expect that to be transient and run its course without any specific management. If it doesn't run its course, then perhaps programming change. Sure. In the bridge, is low bar, high bar, front, or sissy bar interchangeable? I don't know what a sissy bar is. And you can, whatever squat variation you'd like to train, sure. I think that it'd be hard to argue that one is better than another without a specific outcome that you're trying to program for. Brown rice or white rice? Either way. Boxers or briefs? I'm a boxer brief dude. Yeah. You know, I come from humble beginnings, so I occasionally like to do nice undies, you know? So sometimes we'll go step up outside the Fruit of the Loom gig, but you'll have to ask your sister about that. No, I'm just kidding. Hey, Doc, do you see any benefits of inversion boots? No. There you go. How did you like Atlanta? I think Atlanta has got some soul. It's got a bunch of history. That's cool. The Beltline is a really cool area. It's a nice foodie scene. That being said, I don't know. Most major cities kind of feel the same to me, to be honest. And Atlanta didn't really stand out, to be honest. But cool people, for sure. I just got a drone. Any advice? Oh, cool, man. I think that I would take it to an open area and just fly it around, get used to seeing how it responds to your control. And then, I think you should, if your plan is to use it for like travel photography or videography, then I think you need to practice, having it track you, having it circle around you, doing different shots. So that way you're more comfortable doing it when it actually matters. Dan Ludwig, I have a hard time setting my low back in my deadlift without lowering my hips to the point where my hips shoot up a little bit before the weight comes off the floor. I don't know. I think there's a weight that you can probably set your lower back for, and it's hard to say. I don't see the benefit for most folks of lowering their hips more to set their back better and then have them move out of position prior to the start of the pull. I don't think that's a good solution. So, yeah. All right. Are you going to receive submax strength gains on a hypertrophy template? I think we just answered that. There's no such thing as spinal decompression. That's bullshittery. So you just don't do that. Let's see. Low bar squats occasionally cause me some anterior shoulder pain. What are some adjustments I can make to form to reduce the occurrence of this pain? Pain is likely some sort of tendonitis. I don't think that tendonitis is just randomly popping up and going right back away in, a day or two. It tends to be more insidious and persistent, although, sometimes tendonitis doesn't read the book. I don't think I would do anything about pain that, pops up for one training session and then goes away. I think that if you have it for a long period of time, then making sure the bar is in the correct position seems reasonable, making sure your grip is such that you're carrying most of the bar, the weight of the bar on your back and not in your hands, and your elbows aren't flaring, shooting way up, and that your hands aren't over the top of the bar like that. think that's all reasonable. And if you can't figure out a way to squat where your shoulder doesn't, start aching, or your elbows don't start aching or whatever, then you can do a high bar squat and live a full and complete life. And people say, oh, you're not training your posterior chain as much because it's not a low bar squat. Okay, well, where's the evidence for that? Because as the weight increases on any type of squat, it becomes more hip dominant. You're using those muscles more, right? You'd be very hard pressed to suggest that the low bar back squat provides a significantly different training effect from a general, non-specific squat strength variation, or development or hypertrophy development compared to the high bar squat. You'd be very hard pressed to suggest that. You would say that the joint angles are a little bit different, and so the specific strength at those joint angles is likely different over a year. The velocity is about the same. It just doesn't matter. Yeah. You have to recite the lyrics to any song, start to finish. Which song do you choose for the highest chance of success? Man. So I think I just have to throw it back. It's got to be, it's going to be a Green Day song, and I think it's going to be called She. And that's the first song I ever had to play on the guitar, or the Sweater song from Weezer, or Montel Jordan, This Is How We Do It, because that's my go-to karaoke song. There you go. What is your opinion on adding things like curls and lateral raises to strength programs? I think that increasing the muscle cross-sectional area of arms and shoulders is probably more of an aesthetic thing when it comes from accessory movements like curls and lateral raises, especially if we're talking about strength performance in things like bench press, deadlift, because the lateral raise and curls, for instance, are not specific to those lifts. That being said, if you want bigger arms and bigger shoulders, then that's the way to get them. What is your opinion on the OMAD diet? I don't know what the OMAD diet is. Yeah. All right. If an athlete is rehabbing his back, I think that's a silly premise, but all right, we're going. If an athlete is rehabbing his back and peaking for a competition, I think both of those things are mutually exclusive. All right. Just to get used to it again, I would not peak during a time when my back was not cooperating with my current training status. But anyway, let's see. So say that's happening. Then you will calculate his competition maxes a little higher or stick to his recent numbers. I actually don't understand that question. If you have a person who's unable to pull from the floor or squat to depth in the competition types to competition standard, then I wouldn't peak during that time. That seems ridiculous, right? Why would you do that? You're setting somebody up for failure. You're trying to figure out a way to train that allows them to get over the avoidance patterns of avoiding certain movements, get over the fear of handling heavy weights, to get them better at producing force at very specific joint angles and velocities and this, that, and the other. So why would you peak? This makes no sense. I wouldn't do that. Sport-specific training ideas for the Highland Games. Event practice. There you go. Bax fam, is it common with RPE training for the weights and reps to stay the same over all 3 sets if enough rest is taken, or am I possibly undershooting my RPE on sets 1 and maybe even 2 and 3 if the RPE is still 8? I think for 8, RPE 8, you can usually do sets across, most folks. Yeah. Case Nides, are you coaching Baraki currently to get him ready for nationals? Yes. I mean, we're just coming up with programming plans together, Coal Mine at Canary 79. Hey, Jordan, in your view, is there any difference between block pulls and rack pulls? No. If the bar's from the same height? No. All right. Philip Yazbek, can I run the bridge for 1 year? No, you can't. Joe Vlogs, what would you say the minimum healthy body fat percentage and waist size is for a 5'7", 80 kilo male? I don't have a minimum body fat or waist size that I think is healthy. I don't think that's well established or validated, so that would just be pulling an opinion out of the air and then presenting it as fact. I don't think I should do that. What are your thoughts on heavy singles? Do you consider it beneficial? Well, look, everybody needs somebody, and I think that, heavy singles they need dates too. Oh, you mean training? You mean training? I see. Well, I think that if the goal is to get better at doing heavy singles, performing heavy singles is likely to get you better at them, right? It's very specific. How else are you going to get better doing heavy singles? Hey, Doc, what's up? Digging the shirt and glasses combo. Hey, thanks. How long do you usually rest between working sets? Depends on the lift, how I'm feeling that day, and I usually time it 3-4 minutes, maybe up to 5 minutes on a really very important training day. But I think resting longer than that, there's not evidence that people perform better there. And at some point it becomes a logistical issue. What are your thoughts on wearing elbow sleeves when benching? I think it stores energy in maybe a little bit in the for most elbow sleeves, and probably helps with benching. But if you're not going to a meet and it allows you to train your bench, and you want to train your bench, then carry on. OMAD is 1 meal a day. That sounds like a bad idea, unless it's the only way somebody can be compliant with a calorie-restricted diet. But I don't see the evidence out there that's overwhelmingly supporting intermittent fasting from a compliance standpoint. So, Dr. Feigenbaum should one start the starting strength novice linear progression if diagnosed with frozen shoulder. If someone has a current diagnosis of frozen shoulder, they cannot, in fact, train using the novice linear progression because many movements will be impossible for them to do. So, there's that. What are your thoughts on adding a few weeks of 5x4 on the comp lifts after the single at 8 on the strength templates instead of going from 5x5 to 5x3 in week 6? I don't think that it might work and it might not. The issue is keeping the average intensity and the overall stress appropriate. So I don't know if you just necessarily need more volume there, compared to how it's designed. Longer duration training sessions, greater than 150 minutes. Do you see any issues with this? Some jerks tell me it's too long, but I think it's all sweet. I think that anybody suggesting that too long of a training session does deleterious harm to a person who is previously adapted to a similar workload, the burden of proof is on their shoulders firmly. Please cite your sources. 76-year-old male, weight training pretty much all my life. Hey man, thanks for being on the tubes. Don't have the shoulder mobility for overhead squats, trying shoulder mob exercises. Does this sound like a fool's errand to you? Well, check this out. The real question I would ask you is, I would say, well, why do you want to overhead squat? Is there a date at the end of the tunnel? Is there money? Is there pride? Do you really is that the only way that you're going to get up and go to the gym because you're going to overhead squat? Because if no, I think there are many other options you have to actually train in a productive manner, particularly the squat. I don't see the overhead squat as being a terribly useful training variation for most folks, unless they're either an Olympic weightlifter or a CrossFitter. I think otherwise it's just not terribly useful compared to other options that we actually have. So I would probably pass on that. And I think that doing shoulder mobility exercises that are not, in fact, overhead squat type movements, meaning overhead squats with PVC pipe, overhead squats with a band, overhead squats with a barbell or weight, I think those do not help your overhead squat. There you go. How should a squat warm-up look like? You should squat, and then you squat a little bit more, and you add a little more weight, and you squat some more, and you keep squatting, and then eventually you end up at your work sets. Now, as far as specific reps, that's going to depend on the actual prescription. As far as specific weight, that's going to depend on the actual person and what load they're going to, what the goal for the training session is for that day. So I don't have a specific squat warm-up for you other than it should revolve around squats. What did you ever do to Stevan on the Exodus strength forums? I never did anything to him. He just disagreed with me based on some things that I don't think that he could really articulate, and I understand why he was disagreeing, and I don't see that as a personal affront. I just think that we disagreed, and when I explained myself, he just said he didn't agree, and I think that's fine. I don't necessarily know anything about him or his coaching practice or his personal sort of experience, but I think that the more and more that we learn about this stuff, the more and more our message gets refined, and I think that none of the refinements lead me any closer to Stevan's premise. So just, yeah, there you go. How was your experience at Eastern Virginia Medical School? It was expensive. Yeah, paid a pretty penny for it, but good medical school, They routinely do very, very well on boards and rank lists or match lists and everything else, and that was fine with me. Do you ever program box squats? Yes, sometimes. If so, do you find them more or less useful than pin or pause? Well, it depends for what. If the goal is to get somebody squatting below parallel, and to maximize their 1RM in that exercise, I don't know if box squats are very, very useful overall. I think they're less specific, and so I don't think I would use them, as frequently as pause or pin squats. That being said, if someone tended to have a overzealous response to box squats as measured by their improvement in the 1RM, that as far as I could tell, then I would use it more for them. Yeah. Hey, Jordan, why do we get DOMs in the majority of our muscles but not in our delts? I think that anybody who's ever done a lot of pressing work will disagree with you that you can't get DOMs in your delts. There you go. Hi, Jordan. I have flat feet and my squat sucks. In your opinion, does having flat feet affect squat performance? Not necessarily. Make sure you get some lifting shoes. You might need a higher heel, but otherwise, you'll be fine. J-Dub, Life and Times. Do you have any tips for those brand new to RP to help accurately rate sets? Start now. You'll be better in a couple weeks and be better still a few months from now. So, do I ever suggest pushing to a 10 to use as a reference point? I do not like that strategy, but I have used it before. Sure. For general strength trainee, is there any benefit to paused bench versus touch and go? It's different. If you're trying to generally develop force in your shoulder girdle in multiple different ways, then using different variations may help achieve that aim. My question back to you would be, for a general strength trainee, is there any benefit to touch and go bench over pause bench? Resistance band. Oh, here we go. Resistance band overload bench. What band resistance level do you recommend? I don't. Yeah. High resistance and thus less weight on the plates or on the bar, or lower resistance with more weight on the bar? It's not that simple. What goal are you trying to achieve? It depends. Izzy Cubello, why do you recommend to extend the lumbar spine when deadlifting if it is not for safety reasons? For force transfer efficiency, it's likely best through a spinal position that doesn't necessarily move that much. So the lumbar spine in its normal anatomical position gets a lot of muscular activity around it to prevent it from rounding or overextending. And so I think that's probably the most efficient way to transfer load, transferring force from your hips and lower extremities through your spinal segment to your shoulder girdle, through your arms to an implement like the loaded barbell. Based on the biopsychosocial model of pain, do you feel that biomechanics play a subtle role in pain experience? I think as far as there are neurologically or psychological expectations on pain relevant to technique. Like if someone tells you that if your knees slide forward, you're going to have knee pain, or if you front squat, you're going to have knee pain, or if your knees cave in, you're going to have knee pain. Well, that's the expectation that you're going to have knee pain based on social learning. But as far as the mechanical aspects of it, I don't think that's as reliable as a social learning aspect. Okay. Hey Jordan, can you come up with a video about lower back control? I find the videos out there confusing. I understand the concept, but do you form an arch naturally, or is there a cue to arch it? You're trying to basically be in normal anatomical position, which is a slight lordosis. In order to actively contract the musculature around your spine, you may need to cue yourself to actively extend your lumbar spine a little bit to get the muscular contraction around it, but you wouldn't want to be in overextension, no. What sort of parents did you have? Mostly my dad. Yeah, my dad's my favorite human in the entire world. He's great. I don't really know how to describe him other than being great and very supportive, and he'd do anything for us. So, and I would do anything for him. Yeah. Recently had someone tell me my adrenals will get fried from shift work. Well, it is true that shift work does increase risk of a whole host of gnarly things, and in general, I don't think that shift work plays nicely with life, human life. But that being said, there are jobs that need to be done and people who need to do them, and your adrenal glands are not going to be, the things that pay the price. And I think somebody talking about adrenal fatigue or adrenal, burnout or anything like that because of shift work, that person has thereby identified they are not in fact an expert in the subject and should probably just let the adults talk. These are the same people who would recommend that you get all these erroneous labs drawn so that you can take some nutraceuticals but not medicine to correct an imbalance. Likely for this low price of some monthly fee. Jordan, I got accepted in my top choice PA program. Hey, thanks, man. Or congratulations, not thanks. Congrats. Why does creatine monohydrate raise serum creatinine levels? Because it cyclizes to creatinine, although not to the same effect, to the same amount that crealkaline or creatine ethyl ester. Those do much more readily. That being said, it seems to be sort of attenuated with longer term dosing. Do you recommend any coaches near Toronto? You could do a lot worse than seeing Alex Cerebri at Element CrossFit. Thoughts on weighted dips as a substitute for the bench press? They are not a substitute for the bench press. It's a substitute for weighted dips. If you want to get better doing weighted dips, do weighted dips. If you want to get better at bench press, do the bench press. If you want overall development of the shoulder girdle, you would probably train multiple different lifts. I don't know if you could make the argument that dips are better than press and bench press and incline bench. I think that'd be a tough argument. What is your opinion on the efficacy of shoulder surgery following repeated dislocations? I don't have an opinion on that. Yeah. Making some challah bread next week. I might. Why is the 4 reps at RP9 more challenging for me after a single at 8? Usually it's because there's a higher conditioning requirement for that 4 at 9, and you're already got some pre-fatigue from the single at 8, usually. How should pins be set on squat rack for pin squats? They should be set low enough so that you're just below parallel when you squat. Yeah. The new 12-week strength you have, switch days on bench and overhead press, there's no reason for that. Yeah. Hey, just to confirm, PA program spent about 10 minutes as part of the lecture in regards to nutrition and exercise. That is our training. Yeah, that's not unusual. Yeah, unfortunately, there's a limited time to learn about this stuff. And while I do think that having a more longer, more thorough approach would be beneficial for patient well-being, I think that, you have to draw the line somewhere. And unfortunately, I'm not in control of that. Optimal frequency for coitus. I think that's an individual variance there. Hey, Jordan, a female friend asked me to ask you why women have cellulite and men don't. Is this a hormonal thing? Some men have cellulite, particularly those with significant adipose tissue stores. That being said, the traditional female fat distribution is gynoid, meaning that it's in the lower extremities, not the android obesity, which is centralized around the abdominal tissue. So in the lower extremities, you tend to have a little more cellulite, but there are men with gynoid fat distributions. Yeah. Do I still recommend the starting strength LP for beginners? I think you could do a lot worse than it, but it's not, there's nothing special about it. Alex from Alpha Destiny is allegedly a guru in strength and size. I don't know, Alex. Yeah, I don't know. Do you feel that most lifters are either really good at squat or really good at deadlifts? No. I think some lifters have their own preferences based on their initial success in a particular lift, their leverages, their sort of Bayesian model of performance, meaning that they expect to do well on a squat or a deadlift based on their previous experience. And so whenever that's confirmed, that gets a little stronger. And when their predictions are wrong, they have to change the model that they think of the type of lifter that they are. But the best power lifters are 3-lift lifters, meaning they're good at everything. Dad shirt on fleek. Hey, thanks, buddy. I find I respond well to higher volumes and notice that during the very end of my specialization phases, I don't seem to improve as well. Could I keep higher volume for longer going into a meet? Yeah, in fact, that's exactly what I would do. After returning from time off due to a medical condition, what program would you use to return to a baseline? It depends how well trained you were before and what medical condition. You can do the bridge. Yeah. Hey, Jordan, for someone that wants to lose weight and keep strength, You want to lose 20 plus pounds, go from a 40-inch waist to 37, 38. Which template do you recommend? I'd probably do the hypertrophy template. Yeah. Mike Cunning. Hi, Jordan. I've been cycling through the bridge for quite a while. I added extra day for more press and bent over row volume. Now I'm thinking of switching to hypertrophy, then 12-week strength. Yeah, I would do that. 4-week hypertrophy or 4-day hypertrophy plan would be good. Yeah. How would you prep a quick morning coffee? I'd probably do French press. French press or AeroPress, yeah. Writing my lit review on subunit versus attenuated vaccines, and I'm taking a break. Any fun tidbits on either one? You could talk about the hepatitis C outbreak due to the fear over the the mercury-based additive that was, and the aluminum that they removed, even though there was no adverse reaction to it at the amounts that were given in vaccines. But then people didn't get their hepatitis vaccinations, and then subsequently got hepatitis. Yeah, that'd be an interesting little tidbit there. Hey, Jordan, did you look at the Porsche at all before you went with your R8? I did, yeah. And the thing is, you couldn't get a 911 GT3 also because there was this really long list. Like, you had to get on a allocation list that was years out. And then also, I test drove a used model. I didn't like it. Yeah, I felt like it beat the crap out of me. But cool cars. Cool cars, though. I just wouldn't want to drive it every day. Competition peaking, 4 weeks for accumulation phase and intensification phase before tapering for 1.5 weeks. I don't necessarily know if that's how I'd split it up, just in general. Yeah. That's a individual difference. Hi, Jordan, I need fractional plates to run the bridge. No, you don't. There you go. I just freed you. Look, the difference in weights in your gym, in your commercial gym, are likely greater than the fractional weights you'd be adding, right, to microload. You don't need that. Just stick to the RPE, and if you're missing a weight in between, it'll be okay. You can still get stronger. You can still train productively. Probably get this question a lot, but how are you liking the R8? Oh, it's great. It's great. It's perfect for me. I don't have a lot of luggage. I don't have a lot of, I don't have a family that I'm responsible for toting around. So this is the perfect time to have that car. And it will not be the perfect time to have this car later on, probably. What city do you live in? City by the bay. This is how we do it, is your go-to karaoke song. That's true. Yeah, this is how we do it. Montel Jordan. No one expects me to rap and also sing, and there you go. Or it's going to be Sweet Child of Mine by Guns N' Roses. But it's too long for me to definitely know all the lyrics. Jordan, can you explain how a lifter can know how to progress? No. Ask me a better question. Yeah. Do I ever crack my back? Not on purpose, but if it happens, it doesn't mean anything to me. I'm thinking about moving to California like you did. Is it a good move? If you have a bunch of money that you want to part with for rent and living expenses, then yes, it's beautiful. The people are great. It's harder to do business here from a financial perspective because of extra regulations, laws, and taxes and this, that, and the other, but it is beautiful. You pay that geoengineering tax for sure. Hey, Doc, I've been having pain around my shoulder area each time I bench for the past 3 to 4 weeks. Been training through the pain, but the pain hasn't lessened at all. Should I continue to train or train? I think that if it's bothering you and it's been persistent and you have not been evaluated by a medical professional, you probably should be evaluated by somebody who's up on the pain science and is experienced with strength conditioning. And we have 2 guys that do that, Derek Miles and Michael Ray. That's what I'd recommend. PSA, Ultimate Frisbee is not the sport for lifters. That's true. That's probably true. Can your CNS be fried if you set yourself on fire to increase your squat? Only if you use coconut oil because you heard it was a good moisturizer. Just wanted to chime in again and acknowledge the elegant style of lighting in these videos. Soft and supple illumination. Hey, there you go. The new Eminem album is great. He's very angry, which I like. That's good. Let's see. What's up, Blake? How you doing? I just want to say thank you so much for using RP in your programming. It has really changed my training a lot. It's been extremely helpful in training in a sustainable and appropriate way. Hey, thank you. An anonymous YouTuber told me that a deadlift is wrong to have your shoulders protract as you get it off the floor and then retract at the end. You have to stay tight and only use hip extension. Well, hip extension and knee extension and, plantar flexion. I guess I wouldn't want to see your shoulders actively retract and then protract. If it does do that, you could be a little tighter, sure, but it's going to happen. People with long arms, people with with kyphoses, they're going to have some protraction. Yeah, you wouldn't want to try to squeeze your shoulder blades together off the floor, though. Don't do that. Melissa says you're doing a lot less hating on CrossFit. Well, no one's asked me anything about CrossFit. We'll wait. How would I know what doctors are up on pain science? Usually they are pretty vocal and write a lot of stuff about it. So if someone is not up on it, they probably don't talk about it, Since people can lose strength so quickly, that's not necessarily true. What should athletes do the week before meet? Well, that's going to be based on the empirical results. Some people will peak very quickly, right, and otherwise detrain a little bit, but they're not losing a ton of strength. They're just losing an ability to display said strength because there's a decay. So there's a difference between like strength potential and ability to display strength. It just depends how you define it, right? So strength you need to define very specifically because strength is specific. That's kind of a little circular there. But in any event, I think that everybody's going to be different. 3 days off, 2 days off, 1 day off from the last training exposure to the meet. It's going to be personal preference. A lot less hating on CrossFit, probably listening to the podcast. That's funny. How was meeting Omar? What did y'all say to each other? We just talked about the internets, the grams, poked some fun at mutual people that we would make fun of. And nice guy. So there you go. For video submissions, what is the problem with filming it in portrait versus landscape? I'm in a home gym and it's difficult to set the phone camera far enough away to capture everything in landscape. Well, if it's vertical, it doesn't show up very well on my timeline on Premiere Pro when I edit the video. And so then I have to do a bunch of extra work. So that being said, your camera, like the focal length doesn't change. If you can film it in portrait, you can also film it in landscape. Just make sure you're not zoomed in, Hey, Doc, thoughts on CrossFit? Sarcasm. Well, this is a great question. I think that CrossFit has been the best thing to ever happen for barbell training. I think that without CrossFit, we would not have the equipment industry be as prolific as it is. I think that we would have less people involved in all the barbell sports, so that's strongman, powerlifting, Olympic lifting, and obviously CrossFit. They've done the best for these industries than anything else ever in the history of barbell training, ever. I think that they could do a better job with putting the right people in places of power to actually help push the public health agenda. And I think that there's been some missteps as far as how the CrossFit Games is going to work. But that being said, it's not my business, so I don't get to decide that. I don't necessarily think that there's anything terribly unique or uniquely beneficial about doing WODs versus regular strength conditioning, but again, that's more stylistic, and I think that if you really wanted to get down to brass tacks about the efficacy of certain programming styles, you'd have to define what goals you're actually measuring. Yeah, there you go. Hey Jordan, love your stuff. Has really changed my lifts and perspective on what's possible. I'm considering pursuing medical school and becoming a doctor. Any tips on a path being like you in Austin? Well, if you want to coach, start coaching now. Med school is cool. If you want to be a doctor, if you don't want to be a doctor, do not go to med school. It's a terrible way to gain credibility. It takes too long and costs too much. So, all right, we've been here for an hour. Hey, so there's this guy, Jordan_Barbell Medicine_, and you guys should definitely go report this guy's profile. He said some nasty stuff to Austin's wife. He's an impersonator account. And I think that you guys need to go report him on Instagram because it's not cool. Anyway, thank you guys for tuning in.